Kendall's a person too. She likes Kevin. She's making her desires known. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, mate, but Emily's really loyal. This would ruin her.
Back in the day, we all got up to stuff. These only...
We are talking the movie Metal Laws, directed by Peter Sollett. But before we get into the crux of this review, we have to talk about its connection with Game of Thrones. Now, at its peak, Game of Thrones was the pinnacle of modern television, hailed as the heroes of Hollywood. Its creators, D.B. Weiss and David Benioff, were offered a variety of lucrative deals, including their own trilogy of Star Wars films. Now, one of these deals was also a Netflix deal to make exclusive content on that platform. However, things took a little bit of a shaky turn when the Game of Thrones series caught up with the books that inspired it, and then the D.B. Weiss and Benioff had to then kind of really take the reins without the novels to guide them, and kind of the last few seasons of Game of Thrones really didn't go down all that well with fans and critics alike. And that's, some of these deals never came to fruition, for example the Star Wars deals. But then the Netflix deals were signed, and this is one of those movies. It's not the only Game of Thrones reference here, there's a couple of other kind of behind the scenes people involvement, so including some music. You might recognise a cameo from the tune The Reigns of Castamere makes an appearance in this movie. However, the thing that attracted me to this movie myself, it's not particularly the kind of a movie that we would review here, but I don't talk about my personal life a hell of a lot on this channel, but you may not know, when I was at school in the kind of the similar age to the characters that are in this movie, I myself kind of got into heavy metal, and me and my friends very much kind of mirror this kind of movie's characters in some ways. We were kind of the less popular kids at school, you might say, and we all kind of got into heavy metal, grew our hair, long hair, leather jackets, and at that time in our life, the most important thing was heavy metal. It kind of overruled everything else, and every other type of music was trash, and that's how we kind of viewed it. And that's what typically attracted me to this movie, was that kind of that mirrored the kind of the early kind of part of my life. Now, this movie is positioned as a comedy. I would say this movie feels more like a dramedy, whatever it's called, a drama comedy. Now, that is both a benefit, but also it has some problems with it. So the story focuses on two friends, Hunter and Kevin. Now, Hunter seems to be a little older. It's not clear if they're meant to be in different ages and stuff, but Hunter is a kind of an established metalhead at this point, and he wants to kind of make this band, and he talks this kind of his friend Kevin, and really influences to become into kind of heavy metal, and get him to kind of play the drums with the design to be some type of metal band, but they need kind of more members to try and fill up the band, and that no one's really interested. But Kevin kind of strikes up a friendship / romance with this outcast girl who seems to have some type of mental issues potentially, but she's a kind of a loner on her own part, but is more interested in classical music than heavy metal. However, there may be some connective tissues there. Now, what will happen, you'll have to watch the movie and find out. So D.B. Weiss actually wrote this movie, and he also co-produced it along with Benioff. So what do we think? What works about this movie? In particular, the kind of the writing. I'm going to say I think this movie is a little bit of a mixed bag, certainly in its writing. And we'll talk about what doesn't work in just a little bit, but let me talk about what I think works first of all in the writing and other aspects as well. So what I do think this movie has in its favour are some quite well-drawn characters, and I think even on top of that, its portrayal of mental illness within this movie. Now, this movie isn't necessarily about mental illness, but we have a couple of characters who are certainly displaying certain characteristics of people who are suffering with a variety of mental illnesses. In particular, the standout for me was our kind of female lead, this girl who is very shy, very kind of anxious, and she seems to have kind of fits of rage and uncontrollable outbursts. but she tries to kind of keep her at bay with a variety of kind of medication. And I've got to say, the way her character is written is so sympathetic, and I think a really good example of someone trying to deal with a condition and fit in, but kind of having those crushing social anxiety about, you know, having to kind of like hide the fact that she is suffering with a kind of a mental illness, and to everyone kind of around her, coupled with an actually fantastic performance by the actress who kind of plays her. Now, she's kind of the love interest of Kevin, who ultimately they wanted to become the third member of this kind of band. Now, Kevin is really our main character. Although I don't think he is necessarily, he's more of the straight man he's the point of view character. It doesn't have the more of the dramatic elements like certainly our female lead, or Hunter, who we'll come on to in just a second. He is the soul of the movie, and I think again the actor does a great job of making a really likeable kind of character. And then we have Hunter, who is the self-appointed leader of this kind of band, who again is suffering from other kind of types of social anxiety and things like that. Well, again, we're going to come on to him in a little bit later, because I don't think he's quite as well drawn as others. But again, I think there are some elements that do work with him, and about his his ego, and how his really his anger is really all encompassing in regards to how he treats other people. Again, there are aspects there I think are pretty good. I think the movie also avoids some cliches and has some interactions here that I think work very well. We have, for example, a rival band, we've seen a lot of these kind of style movies where the rival band is portrayed to be as evil or bad in some kind of way, or antagonists. But here, the rival band is actually they're quite cool dudes, and they're actually probably far more well adjusted than our trio of main characters, and seem pretty nice guys. So it makes it a little bit of a different kind of vibe here. If you're a fan of heavy metal, you'll enjoy the references, you'll enjoy the cameos from a variety of different music styles out of that I think is quite good. And obviously there's plenty of rock and heavy metal music within the film. I think the acting for this movie is, as I've alluded to before, is particularly very, very good. Particularly, I think, with Hunter, who is our point of view character, and his the female lead as well, who in my opinion is the absolutely fantastic actress. To be honest with you, everyone does, I think, a decent job. There's no clankers here in regards to performances. Everyone here does a pretty good job, and the movie has a pretty interesting plot in regards to getting to point A and point B, and we have character arcs, particularly for Hunter, for example, who we really see grow through the movie and mature into a lot more of a developed character at the end of the movie. But even smaller characters, I think, do have an interesting smaller arcs and stuff like that. The movie, as I say, is a mix between drama and comedy, so there are elements here that are amusing, there are elements here that I think have more of a dramatic way. Again, particularly, I think, that deal with the mental illness side of things. But what doesn't work? So let's just go back to the writing a little bit here, because I think this is the main problems I have with this are to do with the writing. So the basic one, first of all, is when it's all said and done, the plot of this is your generic rom-com, just with a few tweaks. So I always take the mick out of rom-coms because they all have the same plot. The only difference with this one is you're having it between two friends rather than a real romantic interest. And yes, we have the third wheel, but if we look at the bulk of the story is between our two friends, and every romantic comedy always has the same plot, and it's two mismatched people end up finding each other and start having a relationship. Now, in this instance, it's a friendly relationship, but in rom-coms, obviously, it's a romantic one. And it all seems to be going swimmingly, fine, but obviously, inevitably, They have an argument and kind of end up kind of breaking up for some reason, only to kind of come together at the end. It's exactly what happens in this movie. It's like the most basic of rom-com movies, recycled over and over and over again, only with a few kind of bells and whistles. And this is an example of using that basic formula and just kind of changing it kind of slightly. So there is some lazy writing here as well. But it's not only that. I feel that the character of Hunter, for example, is not as well written as the other characters. He's meant to be somewhat unlikable, but I've got to be honest with you, I think they go too far. I don't think he's necessarily badly acted, but his character is just horrible. He's very, very unlikable, and they don't give him as much of a nuanced kind of character to really make you root for him. And you actually feel the character of Kevin would be better off without him, to be honest with you. You actually kind of root for him to go to this other band in many aspects. I have to say as well, there's some of the kind of I never really got how Hunter kind of got into this kind of heavy metal kind of lifestyle. I mean, it's like he's into kind of bands that were big in the 80s and kind of the 90s, and his father kind of takes the piss out of him wearing these devil t-shirts. So he clearly hasn't kind of got it from his father. He doesn't have any other friends. Like, well, how has he even got into this kind of music? How has he got into 80s heavy metal without it coming from his parents and without him having any other friends that are into it? It just didn't really kind of make any kind of sense to me. Now, as this movie is not necessarily an all-out comedy, as well, I feel it tries to have this balance of drama and comedy. And the problem I think with that is that if you're going to have dramatic elements, it has to be a little bit more kind of realistic in the time, because it never goes full-on comedy. There are some amusing moments, but it's never particularly laugh out loud funny. And I also got to say, I think some of the dramatic elements are kind of undercut by just kind of like conveniences and kind of like easy scenarios. For example, and this is going to be a little bit of a mild spoiler, but it's fairly obvious about what's going to happen. Like the inevitable battle of the bands, where our kind of group come together and perform, but they've literally never practiced together, literally not once. But yet they're able to kind of perform flawlessly. That doesn't really make any sense. Now, had the movie been a full-on comedy, you could kind of, it's a silly kind of movie. But the movie tries to be dramatic, and I don't think it kind of works. And we get the kind of we do have some cliches. We get the kind of the typical bully and stuff. So to me, I think the main issues with this movie are the writing. I think the writing has some good elements, although I certainly don't think the writing is all that good, if I'm completely honest. But it is elevated by good performances. And even though I think the character of Hunter is actually kind of quite unlikable, and the movie doesn't do a good job of really, I think, giving him a lot of nuance, a real character, he still is, not a bad actor at the end of the day. So if you like heavy metal music, I'm sure that you'll find something to gravitate to here. But I think you have to be realistic about some of the kind of the writing here and the tone of the movie and what it's kind of trying to say. It has some good elements, but it also, I think, I had some lazy elements here, and that ultimately was what happened with Game of Thrones. This movie I'm going to give a 6 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.